Greetings, everyone. This is Ohio Dan. This is going to be another unscripted, off-the-cuff type of video. So again, I apologize for any excessive rambling or not staying on the topic that I'm trying to illustrate here, that I'm trying to actually discuss, which is essentially a PSA to the men's community that you don't want to put too much stock into what happens in the community, especially at this point. And I'm going to go into why and sort of what my concerns are here. Basically, as the men's community is in decline, and most of us agree with that, you can talk about how there are segments of the men's community that are still doing pretty well. Smaller channels like myself have been allowed to continue to exist at the very least and talk about men's issues, talk about things from a MGTOW type of philosophy or something roughly equivalent to that. But the thing about it is, it's not healthy to have your entire identity tied up into how you're perceived in the men's community. And there are limitations on more or less what it is that you can do here, especially as PUAs continue to infiltrate. Women tend to have the most prominent voices now, and not in a positive way, like you could argue about Karen Strawn and Diana Davidson in the past. It's not like that at all. Now it's just clearly grifting, clearly about what can we do to sell a message to men. As things continue along those lines, in all likelihood, along with censorship, along with YouTube doing what it wants to create this environment and this scenario in the first place, I think we need to realize that our identity should not be based on how we are perceived here, and it shouldn't be based on whatever happens to the men's community at large. And there are good friends that I've made here. I don't want people to misinterpret what I'm saying. I value the people that I have consistent interactions with here, that I talk to in some form on a regular basis. Reverend 20 Piece, One Fast Dak, several others that may not make content, T-Talks, who, I discuss things with, SBG, Active Aussie. There are many guys here that may want to remain somewhat anonymous as well that I talk to on a regular basis. There are many friends that I've made here, but nonetheless, I recognize the limitations of the community at large, and I realize that not every guy, even the guys that identify exclusively as MGTOW, or they just talk about men's issues, they're not acting as PUAs, in other words. They're not trying to bring any sort of revitalized TradCon, we just need to go back and take control again as men type of rhetoric. Even the men that have very similar views to me, for example, or to many of the friends that I've just mentioned in terms of what the correct approach is, ultimately, not all these men are good men. Not all these men are men that you actually want to be friends with. Not all these men have good intentions, and they may consider themselves to be similar to you, and they may actually have good advice. They may make good content in some cases, but in terms of their character, they're not very good people. And you can find that out if you try to have association with the wrong people within the community. It's like anything else, right? Humans tend to ruin everything. Humans make everything imperfect, unfortunately. And what ends up happening is there seems to be these personal beefs or these many civil wars within the men's community that are primarily about things that aren't going to be good for you, right? Things that you're better off as an individual guy, whether you're making content or not in this community as a participant at all. There's really no advantage in being a part of for the most part. It doesn't matter who wins the little mini civil wars that may take place every now and then or on an ongoing basis sometimes within the men's community. There's really no way that you win or lose. There's no ultimate purpose served in most cases unless you're trying to figure out why somebody's going against somebody else and basically get the facts. And I'm not saying you can't have someone that you stand by or behind. I've done that before as well, versus someone that is just a negative aspect of the community. But the bottom line is that especially as things continue to decline overall, as the wrong messages are sponsored and are dispersed within the men's community, and the positive messages, the messages that would tell men, hey, think for yourself, don't allow a woman to control you, don't put yourself in a negative position by getting married or having kids in the conventional way, don't live with a woman and think that it's anything other than her place ultimately, because she can call the cops on you pretty much at any time. That kind of quality message, that sort of content that actually tells men the truth, frankly, that's being watered down and shadow banned on purpose. And I think most of us know this. So things are not moving in a positive direction in the men's community overall. And the reactions to this have not been helpful in a lot of cases, even from some of the guys that have been in the community for many years. It just is what it is, right? Like, instead of acknowledging that the problem is mostly with YouTube, it's about these other men not being real MGTOW, so to speak, and not really having any sort of ability to speak for themselves. They need to be silenced because they don't agree with us. It's kind of like you see when anything else starts to get into decline, right? It's kind of like, if you're looking at it from a societal perspective or anything else, there's more infighting than an attempt to actually acknowledge what the problem is and either do something about it or not really worry about it because there's not much we can do. And I think that's actually the situation here. There have been those that have talked about gatekeeping. Seems to me like I kind of have the minority opinion here that, especially for MGTOW by its nature is so decentralized, and that's one of its greatest strengths. There's really no way that you can gatekeep. Anybody can make content about anything within this sphere, and unless it's actually threatening someone or unless it actually crosses some line like doxing, which can and does happen, and that's not cool, ultimately people can say what they want about it. They can agree with you or not like you or whatever in between. They can have whatever take they want to have on it. This is not some organization. I don't think that you can gatekeep. And if you were to try to gatekeep the men's community in this way, and the MGTOW sphere in particular, who would you give this authority to? Someone that ultimately, no matter who they are, even if it was me, which it wouldn't be, would try to shape things in their own image and say, well, these guys are allowed to be MGTOW and these other guys aren't. Like, how would that work? And I think the closest thing that you can come to this, and this is part of the general message that I want to give here, right, of what we can do, is to just not associate with the negative elements and the negative characters within the men's sphere. To just not have anything to do with them at a personal level. That's not really gatekeeping, though. I mean, you could try to define gatekeeping that way. I'm not really seeing that. That's just people making good decisions for themselves, which is what we ought to be doing anyway, as men that are potentially self-aware, hopefully, in terms of how society views us and where things really stand between us and women and whatnot. We should be able to do this already, honestly. We should be able to gatekeep at a personal level, if you want to call it that, regardless of anything else that's going on, right? That should be something we're learning. But again, the big picture here, guys, is I'm concerned about some men putting their very identity into men's issues or MGTOW or the online community as a whole that we call the manosphere. You can't just put your entire identity into that. A much healthier place to be is simply being able to walk away at any time should the circumstances dictate that, whether it's your channel getting deleted, whether it's YouTube coming down on everyone, whether it's just drama and beefs getting to the point where everybody's dragged into it, so you're better off just not being here. Like, these things could happen. Most likely, it's not going to be that extreme for a while, right? Most likely, you're just going to kind of continue to see this slow decline where the good, positive messages that try to give men facts and show men that the society really does pretty much hate them and wants them to be second-class citizens in many ways, and to be content with that, and to just have this view that they deserve less and women deserve more no matter what the issue is, whether it's gender roles or reproductive rights or anything else, that, wait a second, I don't have any reproductive rights. Why should I sit here and care about women's right to abortion of convenience or wait a minute, asking a woman to make me a sandwich is considered sexist, but being forced to pay child support for kids that didn't turn out to be mine, well, I should just do it anyway because I've done it all this time. It's not that she should owe me that money back. No, I need to keep paying. Pointing these things out and showing men where they really stand in this society is one of the main things that the men's community can do. And of course, this has been averted on purpose, right? This has been shadow banned. People have had their channels taken down in some cases, but especially just in terms of not being promoted over the PUA, just find the right woman. These men are all just inferior to you. Buy my product. Be a part of my coursework online so that you can get women too. This stuff is favored because the powers that be prefer that. And as long as the situation remains this way, you're probably just going to see more of the same. You're going to see more of this kind of stuff favored. The men's community is kind of going to go downhill more and more in terms of the positive messages. And honestly, guys, it's a matter of choosing whether you still want to be a part of that and why. And for me, it's partly because of the friends that I've made here. It's partly because I do still have a voice to some degree with my small channel. And it's because I think that I can reach more men to some extent. But if tomorrow I woke up and all my content had been deleted because YouTube banned my channel, that would probably be the end of it. And I would go about the things that I'm trying to do with my life anyway. And maybe I'd make another channel. Maybe not. I don't know. My content would still be up on Rumble most likely. But the point is that we really shouldn't put too much stock in this. We can take this seriously in terms of our friends, in terms of the positive interactions that we have, the things that we can still do, the men that we can still reach. But there's a limit to all of this. And that limit is becoming greater and greater as the men's community does continue to go downhill and as there's more punishment for the men that have a real message that's useful, then there's more of a reward for the men that actually don't want to do anything positive and just take men's money and fleece men, and the women as well that fit into that category that are using the men's community to make a living, basically, and not in a positive way at all. That's going to continue to be the overall state of affairs, and it's probably going to continue to get somewhat worse. But don't wrap yourself up in terms of your entire identity in terms of what's going on in this community. I hate to be the whole just touch grass type of person. I'm not saying that you have to get offline, or I'm not suggesting that you have to do anything, but find other things that you can build your life around as well, besides the men's community in itself being your entire identity. I am concerned about other men in the community potentially falling into that. I have kind of scaled back my level of time that I spend online. Not excessively so, but just in terms of limiting myself, I realized that, okay, my channel could be taken down at some point. You've got a lot of negativity. My channel is never going to get the same amount of viewership that it used to. And it's not because of me or anybody else. It's just what YouTube is doing. You know, I accept that this is a limited investment to some extent. I value my friends. I value the men that I can still reach. But my identity doesn't go into this anymore. If tomorrow I found out that I couldn't make videos ever again for whatever reason, I would be disappointed. It would suck. But I could deal with that. And I want other men to consider that as well within this community, especially those that have been here for quite some time, either making content themselves or being part of the community in terms of their interactions. Realize that this can't really be or shouldn't be your identity. You should have other things that you like to do that give you fulfillment as well, in case this is taken away from us at some point. And it's not healthy to have this, we need to protect the men's community, we need to protect MGTOW from everybody else that comes in. Again, I don't think you can gatekeep effectively, except at a personal level, which really isn't gatekeeping. That's just you having personal preferences and knowing who your friends are and who they aren't, which is kind of part of the process of becoming self-aware as a man anyway, to be honest. So I don't consider that really gatekeeping. It's too decentralized. And honestly, that's been one of the strengths of men going their own way in particular, is its decentralized nature. So I don't see gatekeeping at any sort of mass level being successful. It's just going to be how it's going to be. And what I'm saying is, don't put too much stock in it. You can take it seriously to a point. I will continue to do so. But I'd suggest not having your identity being based on the men's community and how you're perceived in the men's community, and instead focus on the positives that you can get out of the men's community and also have a life as best you can, right? I'm not trying to disparage anyone here. Again, this is a message for myself as well, but it's just a matter of knowing the limitations of what you can do here with the men's community, knowing that things are probably going to continue to decline, whether it's over a long period of time or whether there's some sort of apocalypse where all of our channels are deleted. In any case, have something that you can go back to. Value the friends that you make here. Value the positive aspects of the community. Leave the negative people and characters in the community, the negative aspects of the PUAs infiltrating as well. Leave that behind. Focus on what you can do to reach men in a positive way, and realize that there are other things in life as well, and this can be a major part of what you do, but it shouldn't be everything that you are. And you should be able to live and have a good life outside of the men's community as well. And that more or less is my message here. That's really the conclusion, is that there's only so much we can do here, and things are going downhill anyway. So don't put too much stock into what your perception is in the men's community or the infighting and the drama and the BS. Focus on the things that you can do that are still positive here, and also focus on what you can do with your life outside of here, because that can be more important and probably should be in a lot of ways. And again, don't put too much stock into what happens in the men's community, because it could all be taken down tomorrow, and the men that we've reached, but there's a lot of negativity going on. There's a lot of things that are not helpful and useful to men that are being peddled successfully, that are being put out there. And that's going to continue to be a problem. What YouTube does is going to continue to be a problem. And limit your approach to how you interact here, because your identity should be based on other things, not just your perception within the men's community and not just whatever happens to be going on here. Be prepared to live without that if you have to, because there could easily be a day where that's the case and you're better off not being involved here if things go a certain direction, or if you don't feel like this is a place for you anymore. That pretty much is the bottom line to this, guys. Don't wrap your identity around MGTOW or the men's community or men's issues. Don't put so much stock in it to where if it does come down, or if it continues to decline at the very least, which it most likely will, that it's an attack on you personally. Know that you can live without it, because it does have its limitations.